Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fumble Sports Weekly NFL Show. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you're following us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Fumble Sports, and of course on Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and Sports Fumble on Twitter. Appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you go to our website, buttfumblesports.com, and sign up for our newsletter to get all the latest from us. Welcome into our NFL show. We're going to talk all things NFL, whether it's the news coming out of the franchise tag on Tuesday, the combine from last week, NFL draft predictions, and more. Appreciate you all joining us. And of course, we have our usual cast, including Adam at Spotter AJ. Adam, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, really good. Just another full day of slate of NFL news. This train keeps rolling down the tracks. It's never a dull moment in this league for sure.
And as always, with the help of the team at Fumble Sports, led by Blease, want to give a big shout out to Blease. Hope you're doing well tonight, Blease. And with that, we will jump right into the NFL news. And the big news of the day, with the franchise tag being placed upon some players, Lamar Jackson got the franchise tag, but not the one that many expected. He got the non-exclusive franchise tag, which allows him to negotiate with teams about contracts. It does give the Ravens the right to ultimately reject that. But that said, if a team were to sign him, they have to give up 2 first-round picks to whatever team ultimately does sign Lamar Jackson. Adam, what's your reaction to this news? Do you think it's a smart move by the Ravens? And do you think this move actually is a sign that Lamar Jackson's future will not be in Baltimore?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think we kind of seen this coming. This non-exclusive tag at least gives Baltimore the flexibility to work out a deal with somebody, although the price tag is pretty hefty with two first-round picks. But there are some teams out there that are desperate for a quarterback. You know, whether a team like Carolina or a team like Atlanta, can give up that draft capital to get their guy long-term. I mean, Jackson has a lot of years left, but I think Baltimore had to do something for themselves as a little bit of insurance that they couldn't just let Jackson walk out the door. So I think it's a smart move by them, to see what happens. And ultimately, I do believe Jackson's days in Baltimore are over.
Are you that big a fan of Lamar Jackson?
I'm not. I'm not a huge fan of Lamar Jackson because I think we've seen in this league that these running quarterbacks get a good couple years and they can take a pounding on him. Obviously his passing is average at best, although he has gotten better. But he is a dynamic player that can, uplift an offense for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And a team like Atlanta, if you can put a good offensive line and a strong running game around him, I think you can have some success. But for me, I'm more of the ilk of I like a mobile quarterback, but doesn't have to be the mobile as Lamar Jackson. But I am of the ilk of a timing, rhythm, passing quarterback over the prototypical running like a Jackson or a Michael Vick of such.
I completely agree with you in that my quarterback, I want their greatest strength or their sharpest weapon to be their passing ability. I want them to be dynamic. I want them to be able to utilize their legs, whether it's on short yardage like a Jalen Hurts or a Josh Allen, or the great mobility of a Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray. But the concern I have is when a mobile quarterback who isn't as good as a passer ultimately does have that injury, or has a team that can't accommodate that kind of offense that's built around a running quarterback. And then all of a sudden, you're playing with a B- quarterback rather than the A- quarterback that you sign. And Lamar Jackson is asking for A+ money, A- money at worst. And I don't think ultimately he's going to be an A- player. I know he's won an MVP, but he actually hasn't made the kind of progress in his development as a passer that Jalen Hurts has. And I don't think Jalen Hurts is a spectacular passer, but Lamar Jackson should have been better. And there are times it's touch for me. His ball's too much on a line. I feel like his touch isn't there. And it's one of the reasons I'm not crazy about him. You talk about timing and rhythm. I talk about touch. And it feels like the Baltimore Ravens are beginning the divorce process. They're in some ways letting the kids know that the two parents are separating. Like, this is a slow process, but we are ultimately getting to a place where what I thought was the face of the franchise for Baltimore for the next 15 years is going to be out of there before he's 27 years old, which just sounds crazy, but that's going to make a massive swing. It's going to change the dynamic in the AFC North for sure. But is Lamar Jackson, what teams even would want to go get him? You talk about the Carolina Panthers. I feel like they are looking for a player in the draft. I don't think the market's as hot for Lamar Jackson as it may have been a year ago, in part because we're seeing Jalen Hurts as the passer. We're not seeing the age of the running quarterback come about quite as much. Daniel Jones got a big deal, but Kyler Murray got hurt. We're starting to see the pocket passer come back a little bit. I'm curious to know, Adam, if you feel the same way, or if you think that no, that was 1 year. Lamar Jackson's market is still red hot.
Yeah, I wouldn't say his market's red hot, but I do believe there may be a team or teams out there that want to A, sell tickets, and B, want to win now with a ready quarterback. And that's what Jackson is. He's a ready quarterback, and you can win some games with him and maybe not want to have to try to keep going to the draft or try in free agency to get a quarterback, and then hopefully it works out. So sometimes, 2 first-round picks is a lot, but an organization might look at that and say, you know what, we have a guy that's proven. He may not be everything we want. Like you said, maybe he's lacking in the passing efficiency department, but he can win and he can play now and he has experience versus trying to get a kid out of the draft or have him sit behind the aging quarterback and waste another 2 or 3 years of trying to develop somebody. So, is his market red hot? No, but there might be a possibility of a team just not wanting to wait around to develop a quarterback.
I will say this, and then we'll move on to other news. It's disappointing that Deshaun Watson, with all the baggage that he brings, got a contract. The market for him was hotter than I expected. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson, has he had an off the field incident that I'm aware? I'm not aware of one. If there is, I've forgotten it. Certainly nothing that in comparison to what Deshaun Watson did or is accused of doing. And yet Lamar Jackson right now, he's being put in a tough position. And it's just interesting how the NFL, the business side of the NFL, ultimately turns and plays itself out. Meanwhile, speaking of quarterbacks getting their money, Daniel Jones, that's the big news of the day. Daniel Jones signs a 4-year, $160 million deal that will actually have him being paid more per year than Patrick Mahomes, a crazy concept given where Daniel Jones was just a year ago. It does mean that the Giants were freed up to then use their franchise tag on Saquon Barkley. 4 years, $160 million. I believe it's $82 million guaranteed. Adam, let's give a grade to it. Graded from the Giants' perspective, and then from the Jones perspective, I think we can both agree it's an A plus, however high you want to grade it. But from a Giants perspective, do you like this signing, or do you feel like they gave up too much?
Yeah, from Jones' perspective, A plus, 100%. We talked a little bit about this last week, whether they were going to try to sign Barkley and tag Jones, or sign Jones and take Barkley. So it looks like obviously they signed Jones and we'll use the tag on Barkley. I have to err. I give this one probably a C plus or a B minus. I'm not a big Daniel Jones guy. We just talked about the running quarterback, although Daniel Jones, I think, is a little bit more efficient through the air than Lamar Jackson. But again, having said that, when you watch the Giants in 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 9, it's almost painful. Like, as a Giants fan, I'd be biting my nails. Like, do we even have a chance to pick this up with Daniel Jones? And he got better and has developed over the course of his time there. I just have to, look at Dable and say Dable is a quarterback guy, right? He's been with some good quarterbacks. He's worked with some good quarterbacks. He had to be, in my opinion, I would think he would have to sign off on this, right? I think Dable would have to say, yep, Jones is our guy. We can work with him. This is what I see in him. I know what we have. I know where we can improve, to the front office of Giants for them to make this deal. Like you said, 4 years, $160 million, is over $80 million guaranteed is nothing, nothing to slouch at by any means. So they're making a pretty big commitment, years and money wise, to him. So my guess is Dable has a lot of confidence in him, and if Dable does, and I think you just have to see how it shakes out there.
It's crazy to me that he's getting this kind of money. I didn't think he was worthy of that mega second contract after the rookie deal, and here he is. He's turned in one season of production under Brian Daboll into a massive payday. And if it has me kind of conflicted in 2 ways. One, I think about the economics of the NFL and just how crazy it is right now that a quarterback of Daniel Jones's stature is getting this amount of money. Like, wow, you're getting paid. Like, that is incredible. And yet, I don't, to your point, think he is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. There's nothing about him right now that makes me feel like the Giants are capable of winning a Super Bowl under his leadership. And therefore, it has me wondering what the NFL is right now. We talk about it being such a quarterback driven league, but in an age of Patrick Mahomes's, how do you compete? How do you win? And because this isn't Tom Brady and this isn't Peyton Manning, those guys were human. They had exceptional minds, but they were very human. Patrick Mahomes at times is superhuman, and Josh Allen at times is superhuman, and Joe Burrow for that matter. We're seeing more and more super quarterbacks, and so we are now paying Daniel Jones, a fine quarterback, a good quarterback, superhero quarterback money. And it's starting to throw me off because now I don't know, one, what the future is for the economics of the sport, but more importantly, as a couch GM, as a living room GM, it's hard for me to construct a team without throwing money in stupid directions. And I understand the Giants needed to do this in some ways. I don't think they were prepared for a rebuild right now. I actually think they have some momentum. They wanted to double down on that momentum. I think if they win this year or at least hold, kind of hold steady, it builds credibility for Brian Daboll to then build a system in his image over the coming years. But it does have me kind of question what the future of the NFL is, because I thought the Giants in some ways actually had to do this, which is even crazier given the money that they doled out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that teams are scared. I think teams are scared of starting over. It takes a lot. When you bring another quarterback in, it's almost guaranteed a year or two, you're not going to win, go to the Super Bowl and try to make the playoffs. And I think the jump that the Giants made this year, making the playoffs, there's a glimmer of hope. And he showed some signs of being an NFL quarterback. And if Dable thinks he can work with them, I think it's, you're right, 100%. It's stupid money. And does Daniel Jones deserve that contract? In my opinion, probably not. But I think teams are willing to sit tight or pay a quarterback that they have seen that's worked in their system, that there's hope for, then try to start over. And I think, starting over just takes so long to get back up to where you need to be. So I think if they think, look, we made a jump, we made the playoffs with this guy, he showed some signs, let's keep working with him for another couple of years and go from there. But you're right, the money that they're throwing at these guys, obviously it's the most important position in the game, but the money that's coming out there now is just, it's crazy.
And speaking of which, Geno Smith got his money. It's not Daniel Jones money. I believe it's 3 years, very much front loaded, so that in that first year, he's getting paid top end money, but it allows the Seahawks to maneuver out of it. Certainly gives them the opportunity to go draft a quarterback because they have a top 5 pick. But that said, Geno Smith, different circumstances than a Daniel Jones. But Adam, do you feel like the Seahawks made the right decision, or should they have just franchise tagged Geno Smith and have him play on that 1 year deal without having the insurance of maybe like the equivalent of team options in those last 2?
Yeah, I think with Geno in this contract, he played well this year. Obviously they're hoping he can continue to play at this level. I think this is a little bit high. I'm not exactly sure all the details of his contract. I know it's 3 years, $75 million, I believe. If there is some way they can restructure that later on, I think that he could be serviceable to getting a young guy in here now and sitting under him. And if he does play well for 2 or 3 years, even better. You draft a quarterback in the next year, this year or next year, and sits under Geno and takes over the team, hoping Geno plays well and earns that contract. Or if Geno doesn't play that well this year or into next year, you have your guy that you can roll into, and then hopefully in the back end of that contract, either restructure it or have him mentor the younger guy that's coming up. Because let's not forget, Geno's been around a long time.
Yeah,
He's been through many organizations, so I can't imagine the Seahawks are looking at him to have 3 more fruitful years. So this might be a scenario where they said, "Hey, look, we're going to pay you now, but we want you to help us develop a guy. But you are the guy, and you play well. You're going to keep playing." And I think on the back end, if it doesn't work out with him, he can at least rotate into a mentor role for a younger quarterback.
I completely agree with you, and I actually think in some ways it's really smart of the Seahawks to see him as that bridge quarterback, but to not treat him that way. They're treating him like he's their starting quarterback next year, and they're paying him that way. They're giving him that kind of respect, which I think actually builds momentum for the coming season rather than having tension get in the way of that. Because there's a lot of reason to be optimistic if you're a Seahawks fan, but I also believe that they are building for the future. Geno Smith is an option for, let's say, this year, maybe half of next year. maybe 2/3 of next year, but you're ultimately giving the keys to someone like an Anthony Richardson, someone who does need to develop behind a veteran, like you said, and can teach. By the way, Geno Smith has been through a lot, so he can teach a rookie about what it means to go through a media and the glare of being a top pick or a high first round pick, how to deal with the highs and lows of a rookie season, how to become a professional. Geno Smith has kind of proven that. There are a lot of quarterbacks who fail even though they were a first round pick and they don't quite make it as a backup because they don't learn how to be a professional. Geno Smith went through that maturation process. He certainly can teach that to someone else. Doesn't need to be right away. So it shouldn't be like they draft a quarterback and there's pressure in training camp of this year. That certainly shouldn't be the case. And this contract assures that. Everyone now knows what the pecking order is in Seattle. I think John Schneider and Pete Carroll did just a brilliant job, because this is the kind of deal that was a franchise tag would have added questions without actually addressing the quarterback position for the next 18 months. They just did that, but the draft pick is still there. Love the move. Speaking of a move I really like, Derek Carr to the New Orleans Saints. Love the move. If I'm a Saints fan, you immediately get a quarterback that will help you compete in the NFC South. Probably now makes you the favorite in the division, certainly from a betting perspective. And given where the NFC is as a whole, look out for the Saints. They add a few pieces in the draft here and there. They could ultimately be a team that could get past the first round of the playoffs, and then they're not too far away from an NFC championship game. I know it sounds crazy, but the NFC, there are ways to sneak through that conference. Adam, do you like Derek Carr going to the Saints? And are you surprised he didn't end up going to the Jets in New York?
I'm with you. I think Derek Carr going to the Saints is really good for them. You're in a division now with three other teams that don't have a quarterback: Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Atlanta. And now Derek Carr is a proven quarterback. He can go in there with that good defense and they can keep some of those parts and pieces around him. I think it's a great move. And also, he's going to play much like he was in Vegas. He's going to have all of his home games in a dome. He's going to have a road game in Atlanta. He's going to go to Carolina and Tampa Bay, both warm weather. So this is a good position for him to be in New Orleans. And like I mentioned, it's a pretty weak division at this point. As far as him going to the Jets, I'm not surprised. I think that, as we just touched on the division, I think New Orleans has a chance to win the division, get in the playoffs. I don't want to say fairly easy because the NFL is hard to win games, but
no,
but
fair, much easier than the AFC.
Right.
That's
well,
for sure.
And then you got to fight the Dolphins and and the Bills and the Patriots. Obviously, with Belichick there, he's going to get that straightened out at some point. So it's a much easier route to the playoffs. But being indoors, that good Saints defense, I think that was a smart move by Carr, and I think it's going to pay off for New Orleans in the long run.
I hadn't taken into account the dome and the southern locations as much, but you're absolutely right. And I think Derek Carr is that kind of calculating individual at this point in his career. I think Derek Carr knows he needs to win the next year of his life. If he's going to prove the haters wrong, if he's going to validate a lot of the, at times I felt like arrogance, even though other people wouldn't maybe see it that way, but I thought it was kind of what I would call Christian arrogance, which is I'm being humble by telling you how humble I'm being. And that said, I thought he was good, but I never think he earned that kind of humble arrogance. And he's going to win in that division. To your point, I mean, the Carolina Panthers have a good defense. They have some really good young players. The Tampa Bay Bucks are in rebuild mode. They are in throw everything overboard and start over mode. And the Atlanta Falcons, we don't really know what they are because Desmond Ridder, we don't know what he is as a quarterback. So the Saints are primed to make a run. Michael Thomas, if he's able to come back, paired with Chris Olave, I know that's what we said last year, but you saw what Chris Olave could do. So it's not like Derek Carr is going into an offense with the cupboards that are bare. We don't know what will be the case with Alvin Kamara, but the Saints can certainly pick up a running back at some point in the draft. But there's just a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Saints. I really like it for Derek Carr. And I also like that he didn't go to New York because I actually think he will do better in a New Orleans market, media market, in which, as we've seen from a Drew Brees, they embrace the team, they embrace the quarterback. They're not trying to tear someone down. If Derek Carr went to the Jets and he had a bad week one against the Dolphins or the Patriots or whomever, I feel like the New York media would be so quick to ride him, and I don't think he could take it. So for all parties involved, I think it is a good move. Speaking of a quarterback that it sounds like he will be going to New York, Aaron Rodgers is on a date with Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets. The story goes that the Jets owner and members of the Jets organization have flown out to California to pick up Aaron Rodgers, to then fly what's about 25, 30 minutes away to go to dinner in Los Angeles to court the quarterback to make a trade possible. It sounds like this is dating at the highest level. Billionaires chasing millionaires to play quarterback for them. I know that, Adam, you have strong feelings about this. I felt like once the Derek Carr situation happened, the Packers' leverage just went off the charts. They just have incredible leverage that they can work on the Jets right now if a Rodgers deal is in the works. But Adam, are we just saying Aaron Rodgers is a Jet? Can we just say that now?
No, we can't. We can't say it because we can't jinx anything. I don't want to jinx anything, okay? Do not threaten me with a good time. When Derek Carr signed with the Saints, I was probably the happiest non-Saint fan in America because that left this door open for the Jets and the Aaron Rodgers possibility of marriage, like you said, dating at the highest level. I'm trying not to get too excited about this, but when I heard that the Jets brass is flying out to California to meet him, we'll see what happens. It's Aaron Rodgers, okay? Let's be honest. This all could be – he may have no intention of trying to go play with the Jets or anything. This might be all big smoke and mirrors. He just wants the attention on him because that's what he's turned into. Hey, I'm telling you, I've lived this guy. Okay, I've lived this guy the last 5 years. So I'm gonna stay level-headed on this one. Like I said, we've had a lot of good years at Aaron Rodgers, and I know there's a lot of people different perspectives on it. Like I said, it's just I want off the ride. I want off the Aaron Rodgers ride. I want to move on. We've invested 3 years in Jordan Love. Going to be the 4th year. I don't want to lose him. I want to give it a shot. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether he fails or succeeds. If Aaron Rodgers goes to New York, wins a Super Bowl, that's fine. I want off the Aaron Rodgers ride, and hopefully all these reports, are true, and that they can kind of iron out a deal. And to be honest with you, I don't really care what the what the compensation is for it right now. I just want to move on, start a clean slate with Jordan Love, and wish Aaron Rodgers the best. But I'm keeping my emotions tempered at this point until it's official.
I love that, and that actually. I thought that was a great comment by you, Adam, in that I want off the ride. You want off the ride Aaron Rodgers style. I want off the Tom Brady ride. I don't want to hear anything more about Tom Brady potentially coming back from retirement. So that's my off the ride comment. You have Aaron Rodgers. So that's the big news coming out of the NFL, at least when it comes to quarterbacks, and the big news out of the franchise tag Tuesday. But we want to revisit now our game from last week. Adam and, of course, Michael, who couldn't join us today, Michael Dobbins, he couldn't join us. But last week we played the game Sign, Tag, or Let Go. Now that we have some of the results, want to revisit this with Adam to see how we feel about the predictions that we made and how things played out. Of course, the first one was Lamar Jackson. We all said that Lamar Jackson would get the franchise tag. He did. We didn't play the game exclusive or non-exclusive franchise tag, but we all got that one correct. The next one we had was Saquon Barkley. I said let Saquon go. Adam said sign him. Michael said let him go. Adam, do you feel like the Giants made the right decision in tagging him rather than signing him?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think that was going to go either way. I think they were going to tag Jones and sign Barkley or vice versa. So I just picked the wrong one. But essentially, I think what happened there is kind of what I figured would happen in New York.
Totally. The next one, Josh Jacobs. The Raiders decided to tag him. I said let him go. Adam went with sign. Michael said let go. Adam, you got this one right. They're going to be keeping him. I certainly think that's going to help when they go to draft a rookie quarterback, which it looks like that's going to ultimately happen. Do you feel like the same way, Adam?
Yep, I agree, 100%.
Next player, Tony Pollard. Dallas Cowboys have tagged him. That surprised me a little bit. I mentioned last week I thought it would be better for them to sign him, given that the tag year, a lot of that would be committed or devoted to a rehab and trying to get back to the status and quality of play and production that we saw from Tony Pollard earlier this year. That said, still plenty of time for my prediction for him to get signed to stay true. Adam went in a different direction. Adam, you said let Tony Pollard go. Do you feel like you are going to ultimately be right about this one and that they should have let him go, or do you feel like you might have missed the boat on it?
I might have missed the boat on this one a little bit. Like I said, they have a lot of money tied up in Ezekiel, although Pollard is a more dynamic back right now. But the injury to Pollard is just a little bit of question mark. But yeah, I think I'm going to miss them both this one. I think Pollard will end up staying.
Patriots not only didn't sign Jacoby Myers, rather, Jonathan Jones, their talented corner, they let him go. We didn't talk about him, but one defensive back that we did talk about, Jordan Poyer. As far as I know, the Bills did not tag him. Is there any Adam? Did you hear anything? I didn't hear that he got tagged. So it looks like he's going to be a free agent, and in which case, I think the New York Giants with Brian Daboll could be a perfect fit, given their history coming off their time together in Buffalo. Are you surprised that the Bills didn't tag the safety who had so much success for them over the last few years?
Yeah, like we talked about last week, I am. They're a different football team when he's on the field. We talked about the numbers, and the only game they lost, I believe he played, was the playoff game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some talk about him wanting to go play down south somewhere, whether it was Miami or Tampa or something like that. I read an article this week, so maybe that's come true. Maybe he's just going to move on to greener pastures. But yeah, I am definitely surprised that Buffalo wouldn't want to keep him in the fold, as dynamic of a player he is for them.
Yeah, really surprised me. Definitely someone that came out of nowhere as a potential free agent that I think could make a lot of teams better, especially the contending teams that were in the playoffs last year that are just a few pieces away. Speaking of which, Evan Ingram's going to stay in Jacksonville. They tagged the tight end. This is one we all said they should sign him. I still feel like a deal could be made, but the Jacksonville Jaguars keep their star tight end while Jesse Bates, safety of the Cincinnati Bengals, he'll be a free agent. And Jonathan Hargrave, Javin Hargrave, I'm always get his name wrong, forgive me. He will also be a free agent. So a couple also things that we got right. Switching gears, moving away from NFL free agency and tags, franchise tagging. The combine just went down last week in Indy. We got to see all the prospects that are preparing for the NFL draft. A lot of players stood out. Want to go back and forth with you, Adam, about each position and players that stood out. We'll start at the quarterback position. I'll go first. I talked about him last week. I expected him to be a name everyone would be buzzing about once he had his on-field workouts and measurements. Anthony Richardson, University of Florida quarterback. He was unbelievable. His vertical leap, his 40-yard time, the strength of his arm on his deep passes. He showed the Panthers, the Colts, all the Seahawks potentially, all these teams that he's the right quarterback in terms of size and stature that you may want to make a bit of a risky play on, like a Patrick Mahomes, and that you might want to move up, get your man, because this guy's talent is through the roof. Loved what I saw from him. He was kind of my standout quarterback from the combine. Adam, who was yours?
Yeah, you hit the nail ahead on that one. He definitely helped himself in the combine. Obviously he went in with a lot of hype, and people were already looking to him to put up some numbers. But I think his draft stock definitely jumped if it wasn't already on the rise already. I'm going to go a little deeper down the list. I'm going to take a look at Stetson Bennett from Georgia. A lot of I take a look at some of these quarterbacks in college, and they may not have all the intangibles, but I like guys that play in big games and play in a lot of big games and play for teams that have a lot of pressure on them, to go undefeated seasons and play in these big bowl games. And Stetson Bennett's kind of one of those guys. He's not that big. He's not going to wow you with anything, but he's smart. He takes care of the football. He's shifty. I know he ran a 4.67 40, which, by quarterback standards, I guess, it's not all that great these days, especially with some of these other quarterbacks that are coming out now that are really quick. But I think he could be a really good quarterback down in the draft. He's not going to get drafted early by any means, but I think this is a guy you could put on your football team, and he's a good, high caliber quality quarterback and smart football knowledge. And I think he would be a really, really good backup. So going down the charts a little bit and talk about some guys that are off the page there, but I think Stetson Bennett could be a really good addition to somebody later in the draft.
I love that call by you. I thought Stetson Bennett really helped his case. Obviously, you win national championships on a superstar level team, you're going to get discredited. Just ask A.J. McCarron. But that said, he really threw the ball pretty well. Obviously, I thought he showed what he could do with his legs in some of the drills. But even more importantly, I think he got away from the narrative after the national championship that was about a DUI and some off the field stuff. And he went back to showing that this guy is a better competitor than we think. The only thing that really is the asterisk for me on him, and I'll never forget it, is that guy is an old man at this point. What is he, 25 years old? I mean, is he the same age as Lamar Jackson? Like, is he slightly younger? But the whole point is he has so many years on him, the ability to get some progress. He doesn't have any runway left. He is either in the air as kind of a fully formed quarterback or not. I did think he helped his draft stock, but I'm still expecting sixth or seventh round at best, right, Adam?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to be a sixth, seventh round guy that, like I said, you bring him into the fold. A good high IQ football guy that can help your football team. Yep, agreed.
Gotcha. Okay, let's shift to running back. Adam, we'll start with you on this one. Who was a running back that stood out to you after the combine results?
So one guy I really liked all year long last year, and he's a really good football player. He can catch the football, he can block, and he's a really good runner. Is Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. I know he ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, running back standards. It's okay. Robinson out of Texas ran a 4.46, and he's supposed to be the highest graded running back in this draft. But I just really like the way Charbonnet plays. He's just a good football player. He's really dynamic. Like I said, he ran for a ton of yards for that UCLA program, and he's got soft hands to catch the ball out of the backfield. The vertical jump was 37. So, I wish they did more with running backs. Like, instead of doing the bench press, I wish they did like squats or something like that. So you could really see the strength of the lower body of a running back. So vertical jump's really the only one you kind of really take a look at and say, okay, this guy's got, this kind of lower body to get vertical on it. But having said that, we don't have those numbers, but I think Charbonnet helped himself with during the combine, and let the other, scouts and stuff see his agility and what he can do. So I think you might see him go a little bit higher than originally projected.
Love that call. I'm not crazy about this running back class. I've spoken to some others who think it's deeper. I'm not of that opinion. I'm not as wowed by it. But a player who's starting to catch my eye is one of those middle of the draft picks. Maybe it's as early as late second round, early third round, is Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. He ran a 4.36 in the 40. I like him. He's not as flashy as some of the running backs that Alabama's had over the last few years, but I think he's a good running back if you want to pick up somebody who's going to be consistent, is going to give you a burst as a rookie. Again, I expect him to hit that rookie wall, but you can get 10, 12 games out of him where he can be really good in a tandem. I'm always looking at the Patriots when it comes to Alabama. Damian Harris is gone. Jahmyr Gibbs would fit in nicely. It probably is too high for the Patriots to go draft a running back where he will ultimately come off the board. But that's the kind of tandem running back backfield that I'm thinking. Look for a team that wants to pair, maybe even someone like the Houston Texans. I know they have Dameon Pierce, but you pair Pierce with Gibbs. Seahawks is another one. You pair Walker the third with Gibbs. That's a nice tandem, and it's definitely one that kind of stood out to me because he has a bit more speed than I expected. He has the intelligence. He has the toughness. He's played against elite competition. So I liked what I saw from Jahmyr Gibbs. He's definitely someone who I think increased their draft stock over the combine. Moving now to wide receiver, I'll go in on this one. Jalen Hyatt was a name I had my eye on going into the combine. I was excited to see how he was going to perform. He did well enough in the 40 time, running a 4.40. And then in the drills, I thought he performed exactly how I wanted him to, which is he's really talented. He showed it during Tennessee's season, especially in that Alabama game. I wanted to see him just have a consistent day. He didn't need to be too spectacular. I thought he was good enough to be a second round pick. I really like him. Again, it might be late second round, early third, but I thought Hyatt did enough to really impress me and stand out at the wide receiver position. Who was that wide receiver for you, Adam?
Well, I know you and I talked about last week about we're on opposite sides of the fence with the wide receiver class this year. I know you're not too big on it, and I'm on the other side. I think it's a really deep class. If you go up and down the list between Addison, the Jigba from Ohio State, Hyatt, as you mentioned, super talented wide receiver, Downs, Reed, Tillman. I just think the list goes on and on. This wide receiver core, I really, really like this class. I'm going to take a look at Marvin Mims Jr. from Oklahoma. I know he's a little short on the end at 5'11", but he ran a 4.38 40, had almost an 11-foot broad jump and almost a 40-inch vertical. He's the kind of guy that can be a deep threat, and he's also really, really good run after the catch. So Marvin Mims Jr., again, Oklahoma, a big-time program. He made a lot of big plays for that organization. I really, really like the fact that he came in at a 4.38 40. I think that's definitely going to help him. I think he was around maybe just out of the top 10 ranked for wide receivers, but I think this will definitely put him probably 7th, 8th, ninth ranked wide receiver on the draft board. So I think he definitely helped himself.
Well, you're higher on the wide receiver position than I am. I'm a big fan of the tight end position. I'm going to let you start, though, on this one, Adam. Who is a tight end that stood out to you from the combine?
Well, this stood out to me at the combine. Unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe he went, and that's Jake Bobo from UCLA. Big tight
Yeah.
end, 6'4". I know he's kind of a wide receiver, tight end kind of tweener, but Jake Bobo, and I know going back to Charbonnet again, but that UCLA offense was absolutely potent this year. Although I was wrong with DTR, I did think he was going to have a little bit better of a combine than he did. He kind of struggled a little bit, but with that UCLA offense, Jake Bobo, 6'4", 210 pounds. He can block, he can receive, real soft hands, and he definitely can move with the ball after the catch. So unless I'm mistaken, I didn't see him at the combine, but Jake Bobo is a tight end I would watch for the draft.
So I'm actually going to start here with a tight end that I expected to perform better, and he didn't. So it's kind of a disappointing one. And that's Michael Mayer. He really didn't stand out to me at the combine in a way that I expected him to. He wasn't the name of the tight end position that everyone was buzzing about. Now, I am happy to say that the one people were buzzing about is one I tipped off last week, and that's Darnell Washington of Georgia. Massive size, and you also saw some incredible hands, but in the blocking drill with the sled, he dominated. He had an unbelievable one-handed catch, got the toe tap almost both in. He is my favorite tight end in this draft. He probably won't be the first one taken off the board. Again, probably a second-round pick. I really have the Lions targeting him. I think he would be a great replacement for Hawkinson after they moved on from Hawkinson last year. But I was dazzled by Darnell Washington. He was not the best tight end at Georgia this past year, but he is proving to be one of the best tight ends in this draft. Love his size. He ran a good 40 time. Everything about him, I'm just gaga. So we better move on before my man crush for Darnell Washington shows even more. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball and the defensive line. I'll kick this one off. And it's another Georgia player, Nolan Smith. Great 40 time, 4.39, unbelievable speed, performed really well in the bag drills. If you want to build a great team, build a defense of Georgia football players. Like, I'm just impressed by his metrics. I'm impressed by his film. Love Nolan Smith. I think he is an edge rusher that every team would want. Love him right now.
Yeah, I agree. And, Quay Walker for us for the Packers, we drafted him, and he really came on this year. He made some pretty bonehead plays towards the end of the year. But he's definitely a Georgia football player, plays in a lot of big games. Another college team that plays in a lot of big games, albeit down his last couple of years, has been Clemson. But Miles Murphy as the edge rusher on there, I think he's really disruptive. He's big. He's 6'5", almost 270. Really, really active and a high motor guy, coming from that tough Clemson defense. So as an edge rusher, if you're not going to go with a Georgia guy, I think you could slide over to Clemson and pick up Miles Murphy.
Love that pick. What about the linebacker position, Adam?
So linebacker position, I'm going to stay in the Big Ten because that's what I am, a Big Ten guy. And we love, 10-9 games in the Big Ten. And Iowa's defense this year was really, really, really good. And Jack Campbell was kind of the spearhead of that defense. He ran a 4.65 40 and a 10.8 broad jump, which is pretty good. 37.5 vertical is not bad. He's 6'5", 250. Again, size. He can move at 6'5". He can run a 4.65 40. An inside linebacker, I think he's definitely a guy you need to take a look at, especially with that tough Iowa defense. He can play in any conditions. We know that. He can play, in tough, cold weather conditions. So I love Big Ten type linebackers, except for them from Ohio State. Anyone from Ohio State, that's fine. But the other teams I like. So I like Jack Campbell from Iowa.
At the linebacker position for me, I'm going to give two. Really like Jeremy Banks out of Tennessee. Like what I saw from him in the combine. Ran a bit faster than I expected. Like what I saw from him throughout the season. And then another linebacker that I just, again, bit of a man crush. Probably like him more than even his combine results should indicate. And that's Henry To'oTo'o. I think he's going to fall in the draft because he's not spectacular when it comes to his film or his metrics, his 40 time. But this dude is just around the football. He just makes a ton of plays. He makes tackles, and he's not flashy. He's a workman, but at middle linebacker, sometimes that's what you need. You need a guy who's just going to clean up on tackles. And Henry To'oTo'o, I definitely have my eye on him. It might be a 4th round pick. He might even fall to like an early 5th round. If he falls there, I think he's an absolute steal in the way that Nakobe Dean was last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's just a guy who's always around the football, but it's not a sexy play. He's just a pure tackler. I actually think there are a lot of teams that could use him, so I have my eyes on him. Finally, we shift to defensive back. We mentioned last week in our show how deep this defensive back position is and how many players are really going to stand out. I have a couple. I have 2 that I wanted to call out. The first is Christian Gonzalez of Oregon. Oh my God. If you love good defensive back play, this guy will get you excited because he does everything technically well, ran a great 40 time, has size, is fluid in his motion. I mean, last year it was Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame, who was kind of that create player in Madden who has all the perfect things in terms of size, wingspan, speed, technical ability, and skill. This year, to me, it's Christian Gonzalez. I'm over the moon about him. He had a great combine. I think he's a top 10 pick right now. I think he is. I would argue he might be the best corner in this draft. I know others would contend that, but I think he's making a case for it. The other one who I've really fallen in love with is Deonte Banks out of Maryland. He ran a great 40 time at 4.35. Really like what I've seen from him. He, to me, is a 2nd round pick. Some people may think that's taking him a little too high. I think he's going to turn into a real stud. So those are 2 cornerbacks who really stood out to me. Adam, from the defensive backs, who really stood out to you?
So I have 2 of them here. And the first one, back to the Big Ten, not by design, but Penn State, Joey Porter Jr. And the reason I like Joey Porter Jr. is I know he ran a 4.46 40, and it's not bad, right? But people are going to raise their eyebrows at it. But he's 6'2.5". He's a big guy. He's 200 pounds. So to run a 4.40 with that kind of size cornerback, especially this day in the NFL, with these
press
big
corner at that.
Yep, a press corner with these big, tall, lanky wide receivers, with these jump balls and things that they're doing these days. So I think Joey Porter Jr. with his size and with his ability there and his agility and that 4.4 speed, I think is really somebody to look at. And the other one is I didn't see any combine times for him, but just watching the Big Ten this year, Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. Illinois had a top 5 defense this year. They were suffocating at times. And other than him being a little undersized at 5'11", he's scrappy. He's kind of a ball hawk. I know he gets a little handsy at time and has got some penalties thrown at him. But I like my cornerbacks to be football players, like to be gamers and get in there and tackle. And I think that tough Illinois defense was made part because of Devin Witherspoon's play.
Two thoughts on Joey Porter Jr. One, I thought his 40 time is going to make him a steal. He is going to fall because teams are going to move up to take a quarterback, or teams are going to move up to take speed or something like that. And he could fall to a Patriots, to a Steelers, to a team that either made the playoffs or just missed the playoffs. And he is going to be such a find for them. To your comment, he has unbelievable size, great instincts, obviously the DNA and the pedigree. And I like everything about him. I actually thought his 40 time was something I liked because it means he's going to fall in the draft, but it says nothing about his overall skill set. I actually thought that's going to make him easier to draft if you're a team that's a piece away. The only other comment I want to make on Joey Porter Jr. has nothing to do with football. It has to do with sports media coverage, because the NFL Network did their NFL Combine coverage, and during that kid's 40 time, they were talking to Joey Porter Sr. rather, and they were all up in Joey Porter Sr.'s grill. And you think this is the one chance a kid gets to run the 40. If he wants to look up at his parents and get a word of encouragement, he shouldn't have to contend with an NFL Network interview. If you want to interview Joey Porter during any other time, any other drill, that's perfectly acceptable. But the 40 time is the one where the runner can literally look over at their family or at coaches or at people in the stands and literally get a little bit of encouragement. I thought the NFL, like usual, did a brilliant job in its NFL Combine coverage. I applaud everyone on that crew in the production area. They did a brilliant job. But sometimes, can we just let parents and kids have their little moment? Do we really need to be the fly that gets in the middle of their picnic? I just thought it was a miss on them. Adam, what do you think?
No, I agree. 100% miss on that for sure. But one thing we didn't talk about, which we talked a little bit about last week, is we finally got an accurate measurement on Bryce Young. He came in at 5'10" in the eighth and 204 pounds. So what are your thoughts? He actually came in a little bit less than we thought he was at 5'11", or 6 foot.
I think it's really concerning. I think it's really concerning, and I don't feel any differently than I did a week ago. Because if I did, it would be like, oh my God, he's half an inch shorter, or he's a quarter of an inch shorter. But it's actually like, no, he is small. And I think there's a lot of talented quarterbacks in this league who can't survive if they're not big enough. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, you saw the beating he took. You see Joe Burrow, the beatings he takes. Josh Allen, do I really think someone of a smaller size can go through an entire NFL season? Bryce Young, to me, the two comps over the last few years would be Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa. Both of those guys got hurt this year. Both of those guys missed time. I feel like Bryce Young is worth passing on, especially because though I don't like Will Levis when it comes to competition, man, that dude can fire the football. Like Will Levis, we didn't talk about him because he didn't stand out in the ways that Anthony Richardson did, but Will Levis can fire the football. And C.J. Stroud, he showed off. He had a great combine too. I actually thought the quarterbacks as a whole did a really good job, which put some pressure on Bryce Young because he didn't compete, and at the same time, he came in undersized. So, Adam, do you feel the same way, or do you not care about the size at all?
No, I feel the same way. I look at, as you mentioned, Kyler Murray, a direct relation to that. They're going to take a beating, and these guys just, they get hurt. And that's just, I hate to say it, but that's just the nature of the NFL. And I'll be honest with you, it'll be interesting to see what happens because, like you just mentioned, Will Levis, I'm with you. He can fire the ball, but I've not been a huge Will Levis fan, and I won't continue to be. But you mentioned it. C.J. Stroud had a really good showing at the combine and really showed off his arm strength. And not only his arm strength, but the touch on deep passes. He has a really, really nice touch on some deep throws. There could be a shift and say, you know what, Richardson jumped up the board, but maybe not enough to take him number 1 overall, but he maybe jumped in the top 5. But that team that's looking at Bryce Young may be thinking C.J. Stroud could be their guy now instead of Bryce Young after all.
I'm really interested to see what happens over the pro days and in the final weeks before the draft because Vegas called this. Vegas dramatically shifted, or a lot of heavy money must have come down on Anthony Richardson being the number 1 overall pick. And people knew something, in part because Bryce Young wasn't a slam dunk. People want to, for some reason, people just don't want to buy into CJ Stroud. It kind of reminds me like Justin Fields a couple of years ago. Like, this guy's better than you think he is. Just because it's Ohio State and it's the Big Ten, or I don't know what this is about, but CJ Stroud's a really good quarterback. So I don't think Bryce, and by the way, and Will Levis is going to get more attention as we talk about his throwing ability and how he can fire the football. So look out, because Bryce Young, we see so often a quarterback that's kind of the darling of college football, Johnny Manziel style or Brady Quinn style or some other, where they fall in the draft because they might be talked about as one of the great all-time college football quarterbacks, but they don't live up to what scouts want in the NFL, and for that reason they can slip. I'm not saying Bryce Young's going to slip outside the top 5, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not only not the first quarterback taken, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not the second quarterback taken, and I certainly didn't think that 6 months ago, but the trends are leaning in that direction. We're going to shift now away from the combine, shift away from the draft, and close out the show with the segment we always close out the show with, which is Mark My Words. That's where Adam and I make some predictions that we're going to keep our receipts. We'll be held to this, and we'll have to check back in later to see if we got it right. We're going to do this around the quarterbacks that we mentioned in the opening of the show who signed some deals. Adam, we'll start with Lamar Jackson. We're going to make a statement. Mark my words, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens will, in 2023, fill it in.
Mark my words, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in 2023 will have a separation. He will play elsewhere.
Okay. Mark my words, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens will play against each other in the 2023 season after a team makes an offer and moves on. I know that's a long shot, but I'm willing to put odds on it given that we've gotten to this point, I'll double down on the plus money, saying not only will they move on from Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson will go to a team that actually plays the Ravens in the 2023 season. We'll now go to Aaron Rodgers. Mark my words, Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson's night out in LA will result in blank. Adam, fill in the blank.
I told you we can't jinx anything on this thing. I can't say he's a pay for the Jets. I can't jinx anything. I can't do it. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm just going to pass on this one, but what my mark my word would be.
Well, mark my words. They found a nice spot in Nobu to snuggle up, and Aaron Rodgers will be wearing gangrene by the end of the period of time. Whenever the trade period can go through, he will ultimately be moving on. That's my mark my words. Okay, next one. Mark my words, Geno Smith will have how many wins in the 2023 season for the Seahawks? Adam, you go first.
Mark my words, Geno Smith and the Seahawks will have 10 wins next season.
Okay. I'm going to go with mark my words, the Seahawks are going to have 8 wins next season. I do actually think that I know they've got a lot of draft picks, but I feel like the competition will ultimately, they'll regress a little bit. So I'll say 8 wins. Okay, mark my words. Derek Carr and the Saints will finish where in the NFC conference and the NFC as a whole? Where will they finish overall in terms of record?
So mark my words. The Saints will finish with an 11-6 record and win the NFC South and lose as a 4 seed in the NFL playoffs.
Oh my God, you almost took the exact same thing from me. Okay, so mark my words. I think they get 11 wins. I have the same. I think they win the NFC South. I think they win in the first round of the playoffs. I think they are the 4 seed, but in overall standings, I think they have the 5th best record in the NFC. That would be my prediction. Okay, last one. Daniel Jones will start how many games in the 2025 regular season? Keep in mind, he's now on a 4-year deal, so this would be year 3 of this contract. Adam, Daniel Jones will start how many games in the 2025 regular season for the New York Giants?
Mark my words, I believe Daniel Jones will start 0 games in that 3rd year of his contract. I believe he'll play 2 years, and the Giants will be moving on.
Okay, mark my words. I think it's going to be an Alex Smith situation. I think in the 3rd year of his deal, I'll say he plays 11 games, and then they move on to some rookie who then takes over after a bye week or something like that. And that's how we play Mark My Words, predictions that we now have on record, and we will go back to in the future when we are right or wrong. Appreciate all of you joining us for this Butt Fumble Sports Weekly NFL show. As always, I want to give a big shout out to the co-host, Adam. You can catch him on Twitter at SpotterAJ, SPOTTERAJ. Does a great job for us with football content and so many other things. Adam, appreciate you as always. And of course, want to give a big shout out to the Butt Fumble Sports production team led by Bleece. You can check him out at BLEACENFT on Twitter. Bleece does a great job for us. He's one of the most talented guys around. Definitely check him out. And of course, make sure you follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and on YouTube, Butt Fumble Sports, and on Twitter at Sports Fumble. As always, go to our website, buttfumblesports.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. It comes out every Friday with all of our game notes and gambling trends for everything going down around the world of sports every weekend. And be sure to follow us on TikTok Live and on YouTube. That way you know every time we have a streaming show. We'll be doing that throughout the next few weeks with college basketball action. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Twitter Spaces, we will do this NFL Weekly show. So make sure you join us, follow us, and subscribe. And that way you're getting all of your NFL action and coverage throughout the offseason. Appreciate all of you. Make sure you follow us and join us every time we go and talk football. And until then, have a great week.